let's talk about this whole American obsession with independence, right? Because you've got other countries where parents don't just love their kids, they actually support them. They actively invest in them and their futures. Okay, they'll stack three generations under one roof just so that the youngest has the greater chance to get ahead, doesn't have to start life broke and absolutely clueless. But here in America, it's quite the opposite. I mean, parents can't wait to throw you out of the house like yesterday's trash, it seems. You turn 18 and it's not a milestone, it's an eviction notice. You're not a man, you're a tenant who overstayed the lease. That's quite literally how they view it. And they brag about it too. They say, oh, I just kicked my son out. He turned 18 and he needed to learn responsibility. He needed to go out there and face the world, right? But the thing is, no, brother, what you taught him is that family has an expiration date. That's not responsibility, okay? That is abandonment with a smile, right? And it's not even about tough love at the end of the day. It's about selfish love that is all too common, right? The idea that I did it the hard way, so you should too. That whole sentiment. But if you struggled, you would think, why wouldn't you want your kid to not go through the same misery that you experienced? Do you see what I'm saying? Do you see how it doesn't really add up? It doesn't make sense. It's like saying, I walked barefoot over broken glass, right? So you should too. Otherwise, you're soft. I mean, what sense does that make? Maybe you were just stupid, right? Why should I have to experience the same? But in America, parenting isn't about raising kids, okay? More accurately, it's about raising rent payers, if you will. And once you're legally old enough to buy a pack of cigarettes, apparently you're old enough to sink or swim with no life vest. It doesn't matter. They just kind of toss you over the edge into the ocean and hope you make it. It's survival of the fittest. But at the family level, this is no Survivor or anything like that. This is within your own family. And the result, well, a whole generation tossed out into the world, not supported, right? Just discarded, plain and simple. And yet, everybody wants to blame Gen Z's problems on avocado toast and chai fucking lattes. But the real wealth gap isn't spending, it's inheritance. You see, rich families don't just give their kids birthday money, okay? Oh, yeah, here a little Timmy, here's a $5. No, they hand over houses, land, businesses, entire stock portfolios. Do you see what I'm saying? They pass down the starting line a mile ahead of the rest of us. Meanwhile, when it comes to average American families, you're lucky if you get grandma's old couch, a broken down, rusted out Ford Taurus, right? That's like 1,000,000 years old, and a pile of medical debt from all of your relatives you've never even known, okay? The rich transfer wealth. Regular Americans transfer trauma and overdue bills. Okay, that's what you get for being a normie in today's culture, in today's modern American society, right? And this is why the work hard until you succeed line is such bullshit in today's economic times. Okay, this is no longer viable. Hard work doesn't outpace trust funds. A kid born into a wealthy family is cashing dividend checks before they even hit puberty. Bruv, before they even start shaving. Do you see what I'm saying? Meanwhile, you're 19, working 3 jobs, doing gig work on the side, and selling shit on Etsy just to pay for a degree that costs more than your parents' house did. Where does that make any amount of sense? And the real kicker, the same parents who won't leave their kids anything will lecture you about building generational wealth. You need to save. Big man, you can't build generational wealth if every generation starts at 0. That's not how it works. You're not stacking bricks. You're digging yourself out of a crater left by somebody else. Okay. So when people say Gen Z or even millennials are entitled, maybe they're right. Okay. Maybe they are entitled to the wealth that should have been passed down instead of hoarded. Okay. Entitled to start the race with shoes on rather than barefoot and bleeding before the gun even fires. Do you see what I'm saying? But the wildest part, okay, the wild part is that Americans don't even see their kids as kids. They see them as competition. Okay, you see it all the time. They're always competing with one another, comparing themselves to one another. I'm sure you've heard stories much like myself where you've got a family of plumbers, but the dad, even though he employs the son in the family business, he doesn't show him all the tools of the trade because he doesn't want his son to outcompete him. This is my fucking business. I build this shit. You know what I'm saying? So here you have an apprentice who isn't learning anything because you can't get off your fucking high horse and pass the torch. Do you see what I mean? They act like rivals. They say, well, I made my money. Now you need to go make yours, right? Don't expect any help, fucking handouts, you little bitch. You know what I mean? It's fucking ridiculous, man. In most of the world, parents want their kids to surpass them. They want them to do better than they're doing, okay? To stand taller on their shoulders, right? It just doesn't make sense to me. But in America, parents want to make sure that you suffer just enough so that you never forget who the real boss is, right? It's really just ego disguised as discipline at the end of the day. It's like handing your kid a butter knife, throwing them into a gunfight and saying, hey, don't you dare embarrass the family name. Like, dude, what am I supposed to do with that? That's not guidance. That's sabotage. Do you see what I'm saying? And then when you inevitably struggle, they say, well, back in my day, I worked and went to school full time. Cool fucking story, bro. When you went to school, it was $500 a semester and rent was $200 on the high end. Congratulations, Pop Pop. You hustled in the tutorial level of a video game. Okay, we're all playing on absolute hard mode from no point of saving. Okay, there are no checkpoints in our fucking game. Do you see what I'm saying? Parents aren't supposed to compete with their children. They're supposed to coach them, help them along. But in the US, it feels like a boxing match where your own corner is rooting for you to lose. It's ridiculous. Now, I will say this. Let me be clear. I'm not saying everything should be handed to your kids on a silver platter, okay? That's not parenting. That is just enabling, and I wouldn't even do that, okay? I had a rough upbringing myself by any conventional standard, right? You've heard before, single parent, military household, moving every 2 years, sickness in the family, right? Taking away relatives at a young age, witnessing dysfunction, okay? The list goes on. I get it, bro. I understand. But I can also say with absolute certainty that if I ever came into greater financial standing, if I can give my kids the kind of life I never had, well, I still wouldn't just shower them in comfort, okay? I would manufacture hard times, especially if I had a son or sons, right? This is extremely important. Even if you are well off, it is important to manufacture hard times, okay? And not just to piss them off, not to break their spirit or anything, but to build it, because struggle builds character. It builds identity and willpower. You see, the desire to achieve greater things comes out of the struggle. But there is a key difference, a massive difference between manufactured struggle and just outright neglect. Okay? One is controlled adversity and the other is just abandonment, plain and simple. And if my kid is going to learn discipline, then I want to design the lesson. Essentially, I'm not going to toss them into the street at 18 and tell them to figure it out while rent is over $2,000 to live in a fucking shoebox, okay? That's not going to teach them anything. It's only going to force them to struggle, okay? That doesn't build character. That's just setting them up for failure. You know what I mean? The struggle should make you stronger. But in America, it's treated like a punishment. And that's the line too many parents cannot seem to understand. And speaking of, let's talk about this obsession America has with independence, okay? Other countries embrace multi-generational households, right? And why? Why do they do this? Because it's smart, because it makes sense. Everyone contributes, everybody saves and builds something sustainable. Kids leave the house when they're actually ready, not just when the calendar flips. Oh, it's your birthday. How old are you again, Timmy? Fucking 18. Get the fuck out. You know what I'm saying? They don't do it like that. But in the US, independence isn't a choice, it's forced exile. Parents rush their kids out of the door at 18 like the house is on fire, bro. They cannot wait to get rid of you. I don't understand how we got here as a society, as a culture, dude, where parents don't even want to help their kids out even a little bit, you know? And if you're still there at 20 years old, well, congratulations, you're just a fucking failure. You know, there is no other explanation. You just suck at life. You suck as a human being and you're just a complete failure. Okay, now you're just mooching, plain and simple. It's a culture that worships individualism, but all it really breeds is isolation and struggle, a struggle that can actually be avoided or maybe better put, alleviated slightly. And instead of stacking wealth together, families scatter into 100 tiny broken households, right? You have family that doesn't speak to other family for reasons like this, each drowning separately. When they should be all building a raft together, they'd rather take their individual piece and say, oh, I can float on this. You know, it doesn't make any sense. American parents don't raise kids, okay? They raise tenants with eviction dates, and it usually correlates with one of your birthdays. And when those tenants can't afford the rent, suddenly it's a moral failing. It's not a systemic issue, not a cultural flaw by any means. It's your fault. It's only your fault. It's always your fault. Right? Other countries, they seem to build ladders, and America builds trapdoors, right? And I guess you could say the final nail in the coffin is that Gen Z's failure isn't being crushed by fucking Starbucks or TikTok. It's being crushed by the refusal of older generations to pass the torch, man. Give it up. Why are you so selfish? Do you see what I'm saying? Every generation is supposed to lift the next one higher. Isn't that what we've done all the way up until this point? Parents are supposed to leave their kids further ahead, not shove them back to square one. But in America, every generation just cuts the rope ladder behind them. They say stuff like, I suffered, so you should too. But that doesn't teach anything. Okay, that doesn't help. That doesn't build resilience. That's selfishness dressed up as tradition, dressed up as culture. Do you see? It's the reason Gen Z feels like they're just babysitting the rubble of a broken system. Okay, instead of inheriting anything useful or that might actually help or benefit them in any kind of way. Okay, now, the economy isn't the only killer, okay? It's the fact that people who should have had their backs are the same people pulling the rug out from under them. Plain and simple. Parents treat wealth like a trophy that cannot be touched by anybody else, right? Not even their own blood. That's the crazy part. They'd rather die with it and leave it all to their fucking church than to see their children make any use of it whatsoever. So, no, there is no convincing me that Gen Z has broken the system. Never going to happen. Not going to believe it. We just showed up to a dinner party where the meal was already eaten, nothing but dirty plates. The bill was already maxed out. And the only thing left was a note on the table. And it read, good luck, kid. Don't screw it up. Oh, wow. Thanks. Yeah, I cannot wait to start this adulting and life shit. Cannot wait to see what waits for me. Okay. And I just can't help but wonder how much better things would be if this wasn't excused as our culture, as American culture, right? All I know is I will never allow myself to be that fucking selfish. Not in a million years. Hard times are great for what it can do to an individual's character. Do you see? But at some point, we all needed a little assistance, man. Me, you, everybody you know, everybody I know. We all needed help at some point, okay? Anyway, I always appreciate you guys for tuning in to these little rants and tidbits and just hearing me out. And to be honest, I want to hear what you think. Do you agree? Do you disagree? And why? Maybe you've experienced this with your own family. Or maybe you're a boomer watching this and thinking, fuck my kids, I got it out the mud, now it's their turn. Okay? Whoever you are, I really want to hear your story. Okay? Don't forget the usual: like, comment, subscribe. I really do appreciate each and every one of you. We are still on the climb, road to a fucking million. You see what I'm saying? As always, man, it's your boy, Wicks the board. Y'all take it easy.